I patted him on the shoulder, and when he turned around, I hit him with everything I had. I struck from the soles of my boots, putting all 90 kilograms into it. I felt his nose crunch and blood flow, and when he raised his hands to his face, I punched him in the stomach, forcing a loud oof from him as he doubled over. Another blow to the side of his head, and he fell to the ground. I thought about kicking his ass half a dozen times, but then I thought, what the hell? He got the message. I turned to Darcy and said, "Looks like I broke his nose. Maybe you can kiss it better." And then I turned and walked away from the woman who wore my wedding ring and the man who was my best friend. It was Darcy's sister's birthday party, and it was held at Barney's roadside establishment. We pushed a few tables together, drank, and danced to the live music of the band, and everyone was having a great time. We had been there for just over 2 hours when something caught my attention. My girlfriend Darcy was dancing with my best friend Mark, and although this in itself wasn't new, what caught my eye was his hand sliding down her back and resting on her butt, and she didn't push it away or say anything to him. Then I noticed Mark's leg pressing against Darcy's leg, and again she did nothing. By that time, both of them had piqued my interest, and I moved to have a better view of them while pretending to talk to the others at the table. The music stopped, and it took them a few seconds to realize it and separate from each other. They returned to the table, and although they sat on opposite sides, for chairs apart, I noticed they kept glancing at each other. During the next song, I danced with Darcy and, holding her, asked, "Is everything okay?" "Yes, why?" "You seem a little distant tonight, like your thoughts are somewhere else, or you have something on your mind." "It's just your imagination, baby. I'm fine, honestly." We stayed on the dance floor for 3 songs and then returned to the table. A couple of minutes later, Mark asked Darcy to dance, and I kept my eyes on them. They were dancing close again, and his hand ended up on her butt. This time, Darcy must have said something because he quickly pulled his hand away and gave a quick glance in my direction. Half an hour later, Darcy got up to go to the restroom, and about a minute later, Mark got up and followed her. That night, I had seen enough to become suspicious, so I waited a couple of minutes, then got up and headed to the restroom. Mark wasn't there, and since we wouldn't have passed each other if he had gone back to the table, it meant he must have gone out the back door. Reaching for the doorknob, I suddenly realized that if Mark and Darcy were up to something, my exit through the back door would alert them and give them a chance to separate, and then tell me they just went outside to get away from the cigarette smoke and breathe some fresh air. I went back through the bar, exited through the front door, and then, moving as quietly as I could, circled the building. When I came around the northeast corner of the bar, I saw them. They were hugging and kissing. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't even hear me approach from behind. I had just finished packing all of Darcy's things that were in my apartment into garbage bags when I heard someone knocking on the front door. The key turning in the lock told me it was Darcy. I didn't look up from what I was doing when she entered, but I said, "You're just in time to take this crap out of here." I was about to throw it in the trash. "Can we talk about this?" "No. Tonight, I saw enough to understand everything I need to know. It wasn't what you think." "It doesn't matter, Darcy. I saw what I saw, and that was enough. You broke Mark's nose and dislocated his jaw. He's lucky. I should have kicked him a half-dozen times and broken a couple of ribs. I've never seen you so violent before. Sometimes it's good not to see things. Now, please, just take your things and go." "Please, Rob, I made a stupid mistake. I drank too much and wasn't thinking clearly." "Yeah? Well, it's good I caught you making that kind of mistake before I married you, not after." "Please, Rob, it didn't mean anything, honestly. As soon as you said yes and put on my ring, you were supposed to be a one-man woman, and that one man was supposed to be me. You just showed me that I can't trust you. Just take your things and leave." Tears were streaming down her cheeks as she began to take off her wedding ring. "Keep it," I told her. "I don't want it reminding me of you. If you keep it, Mark won't have to buy you one. Consider it my wedding gift to you." She took her 2 garbage bags and headed for the door. She opened the door, turned to me, and said, "I'm sorry, Rob. I love you. I really do love you, and I didn't do what you think." Then she was gone. She called me the next day and asked if I was ready to talk to her. I hung up, She made another half dozen attempts, but I always hung up, and eventually, she gave up completely. Over the next month, Mark made a dozen attempts to get me to talk to him, and finally, I told him that if he came within arm's reach of me, I'd send him to the hospital for a month. He finally got the message and stopped calling. 8 months later, Darcy and Mark got married. I had to laugh when I received the invitation. Maybe I was supposed to be this something old. As a geologist working for an oil company, I had to travel quite a bit, and some trips were long. Shortly after Mark and Darcy's wedding, I was sent on a trip to Alaska to assess the potential of a new oil field. This forced me to leave town for almost 11 months, and since I had no one to come home to, I spent all 11 months in the area. When I did have some free time, I went sightseeing either in Alaska or Canada. Did I think about Darcy on those cold nights? Yes, I did. I thought about her a lot. I loved her with all my heart and was sure she felt the same about me. We met by chance, literally. I wasn't paying as much attention to my driving as I should have been and backed into her car in a parking lot. She wasn't around, so I wrote my name and office address on a piece of paper and tucked it under her windshield wiper. 3 hours later, my receptionist called and said that a woman wanted to see me. She says you're expecting her. I checked my calendar and didn't see any appointments for that day, but I didn't have anything pressing, so I told Fran to send the woman to my office. 2 minutes later, the door to my office opened, and the most beautiful woman I had ever seen walked in. If there is such a thing as love at first sight, that's what happened to me right then. Mr. Allison? I'm Darcy Miller, and I'm here to accept your offer. My offer? I'm afraid I don't understand. Oh? Wasn't that an invitation to dinner you left under my windshield wiper? Although I do think backing into my car is a bit of an extreme way to meet me. Invitation to dinner? I suppose it was probably just a way for you to give me your insurance information, but I saw the look on your face when I walked in, so I decided to treat it as an invitation to dinner. It was all too fast for a guy like me, but I wasn't completely out of my depth, so I finally managed to pull myself together enough to say, "Are you free tonight?" She was free, and 3 days later, when I was walking her to her door after our date, she kissed me so hard my knees buckled. Then she grabbed me by the tie and pulled me into her apartment. "I don't know if you felt the same thing I did when I walked into your office," she said. "But the look on your face suggested you might have, and I don't want to wait another dozen dates while you try to work up the nerve to get me into bed." We lay there, holding each other and basking in the warm afterglow of amazing lovemaking, and I asked, "What size ring do you wear?" "My ring size? Why do you want to know?" "I want to buy your engagement ring in the morning, and I need to know the size." "Are you proposing to me?" "Hey, you're the one who didn't believe in wasting time. I'm just following your lead." 5.5. We set a date, but before it arrived, there was that night at Barney's. It was only after I got home that I learned Mark and Darcy's marriage didn't last very long. It turns out Mark had a hidden side that no one knew about. He was abusive. After he sent Darcy to the emergency room for the 5th time, she decided she'd had enough and hit him over the head with a cast iron skillet. While he was in the hospital with a fractured cheekbone, she moved out and filed for divorce. I found all this out when I was having dinner with my cousin Richard and his wife Dee. "Are you going to call her?" Dee asked. "For heaven's sake, no. Why would you even ask that?" "Because, in a way, you're responsible for what happened between them." "How the hell could that be? I wasn't even here for 11 months. I left town before they even got back from their honeymoon. Every fight they had was about you." "Come on, Dee. They both disappeared from my life a good 8 months before I went to Alaska. How on earth could I be part of their problems?" "Mark is a loser, Rob. Either you didn't notice it or you accepted it because he was your best friend since 3rd grade, but he's a loser. He can't hold down a job, and he can't do anything right. Every time he came home after being fired or quitting or screwing something up, Darcy would shake her head in disgust and say something like, 'And because of you, I lost Rob.' The last time he sent her to the emergency room, they were at the Elks Club, and he had just lost another job. It's unclear whether he quit or was fired, but he was whining about the foreman having it out for him, and Darcy told him to stop whining like a child and to be a man for a change. Mark made a smart remark that she wouldn't recognize a man even if someone bit her in the ass, and she said, "That's where you're wrong. I once had a real man, and I blew it." Bringing up Rob again? On his worst day, he was 5 times better than you could ever be on your best day. "You crap." Mark yelled and hit her from behind so hard that she fell back against a chair and hit her head on the edge of the next table. It knocked her out, and she was rushed to the hospital. 2 days later, she hit him with the skillet. From what I've heard, she hasn't been on a single date since she moved out and filed for divorce. All of this is very interesting, but I think I'll pass on saying hello to Darcy. Haven't you ever made mistakes, Rob? I've done some stupid things, but the point of mistakes is that you have to learn from them. And what you should learn is how not to make the same mistake again. Darcy was a mistake, and I won't repeat it. And I wasn't joking. I miss Darcy, and not a week went by that I didn't think about her half a dozen times. I still carried her picture in my wallet, but I had no intention of seeing Darcy or even talking to her on the phone. She was history, and although I couldn't get her out of my mind, she was going to stay history. But sometimes what you want or don't want to do just doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It had been a long day at the office, and I stopped by the sports bar to have a couple of drinks and relax. I went to Ernie's because I was seeing Juanita, the waitress. We had something going for about a month. Nothing that was going anywhere, just good friends in bed. I was sitting in a booth, sipping a beer and watching the Rockies/Giants game on the big screen TV when Juanita set another beer in front of me. A compliment from the lady at the end of the bar. I looked to the end of the bar and almost said, "That's not a lady, that's just Darcy." But I held my tongue. I didn't refuse the beer either. Darcy took my acceptance of the beer as an invitation to join me, and a couple of minutes later, she slid into the seat across from me. "How are you doing, Rob?" "I've been fine." "How was Alaska?" "Cold." She was silent for a few seconds, then asked, "Have your feelings for me softened at all?" "In what way?" "Do you still hate me?" "I never hated you, Darcy. Was I disappointed in you?" "Yes, I was. But I never hated you." "I'm sorry for what happened, Rob. I really am. I've made some foolish mistakes in my life, and Mark is at the top of the list. But I swear to you, Rob, that there was never anything between me and Mark beyond what I thought was innocent flirting. I didn't know Mark saw it differently. You know Mark. He was always a touchy person, and yes, he did put his hand on my butt a couple of times. But I knew you saw it and didn't say anything. It didn't hurt anything. It was just Mark being Mark. He was always that way." "That's not what I saw in the parking lot, Darcy." "You never let me tell you what happened, Rob. You just assumed the worst and turned away from me. How could what I saw be anything other than what I saw?" I got up and went to the restroom, and when I came out, Mark was waiting for me in the hallway. He said he needed to talk to me about something and asked me to step outside where it was quieter. When we went outside, he told me I was making a mistake marrying you, that you might not be able to love me as much as he did. He said I should break up with you and be his girlfriend. I laughed at him and told him he was crazy. He grabbed me, hugged me, and kissed me, and that's where I made a mistake. I kissed him back. I have no excuse except that I had drunk a lot, and my ego was flattered by the fact that he wanted me. Besides, what's a kiss? Then you showed up, and my life turned to crap. You married him 8 months later. You'd be surprised how many friends you have. You kicked me out, so rumors spread that I had done you wrong, and no one wanted anything to do with me. Mark wanted me, and no one else cared. So when he asked me to marry him, I agreed. Another foolish mistake. I sent you the invitation in the vain hope that you would show up and stop the wedding. How would I have done that? When it came to the part where the priest asks if anyone knows why the wedding shouldn't happen, I hoped you'd be there to speak up and say, "Yes, I object because she doesn't love him, she loves me." But you didn't. It would have been true, Rob. Even when I said, "Yes, I knew I loved you and always would." Deep down, I knew I was making a mistake by marrying Mark. I should have turned and run out of the church when they got to the part of the ceremony. "Do you, Darcy, take Mark?" But I didn't have the courage. I wasn't lying when I told you I loved you the night you kicked me out of your apartment. So why are you telling me this now, Darcy? I want you back in my life, Rob. Even if we never go back to what we had, I need you to be a part of my life, at least as a friend." As I sat there looking at her and listening to her, I thought about some of the things she said. Mark was a touchy guy, and he and Darcy did flirt a lot, but Darcy flirted with many guys. It was in her nature. What bothered me was that kiss. The image of Mark and Darcy hugging each other stuck in my mind. Suddenly, I realized that it wasn't the kiss itself that bothered me. It was their hands. It was the way their hands held each other. Once or twice, I got carried away, especially at Christmas parties where you could play under the mistletoe, but I never held the women I kissed. I never held them the way Darcy and Mark held each other. On the other hand, was I making too much of it? Was I really sure of what I saw? I was angry and furious. In my anger, did I see more in it than there really was? Could it all have happened the way Darcy claimed? Darcy sat and waited for me to say something, but what could I say? I knew that I still loved her. I knew that I missed her, but the question was whether I dared to take the risk. That kiss and those hugs would always be with me. The only thing I knew for sure was that I didn't know what to do, so I chose the easiest way out. You've given me a lot to think about, and although I'm not sure I'll ever be able to accept your version of what happened, I'll think about it. Maybe I'll call you in a couple of days." I saw the disappointment on her face, but she said, "At least it's something. It's more than I had when I came here tonight and saw you sitting here. My cell number is still the same. Feel free to call me anytime, day or night. I'm serious, Rob. I still love you and really want you back in my life." She stood up and left me sitting there, watching her walk away. I was waiting for Juanita to get off work and driving her home when she said, "Do I need to start looking for a new sex buddy?" "Why do you ask?" "I saw the way you looked at that woman who joined you in your booth. Moreover, I saw the way she looked at you. She's just someone I used to know." "Bullshit, Rob. There was something strong going on between you two, and it was obvious to anyone who can read the signs. Be honest, honey, how much time do I have?" "I'm not going anywhere." She paused and just looked at me for a moment, then said, "Yeah, you are, honey. You just don't know it yet." She slid over next to me, unzipped my pants, saying, "But you'll still be mine for a while." Once inside her apartment, she quickly undressed and said, "Hurry up, honey. I want as much time with you as I can get before you leave." "Stop saying that. I'm not going anywhere," I replied, wondering why she was so certain of my departure. As I undressed, I also questioned why Juanita and I never interacted beyond being intimate buddies and almost immediately realized I already knew the answer. She was fun, attractive, and enjoyed being close, but I simply didn't love her. I liked her. I liked her a lot, but I didn't love her. "You know what I want, darling?" she said, and I asked her. She liked what she called half and half, and her favorite place to experience it was leaning forward over the back of the couch. The first half involved being intimate with her, while also stimulating her in another way. The second half came when she cried, "Now, baby, now," and I would switch to the other area. I followed her lead, and she responded with pleasure, encouraging me. At that moment, I had the strangest thought. I wondered why Darcy and I never tried this kind of intimacy. As soon as that thought crossed my mind, Juanita cried out and trembled with pleasure, triggering my own release. Afterward, Juanita took me to the bathroom, cleaned me up, and then gave me another intimate moment. After another round of closeness, I kissed her goodbye and headed home, to my own home. As I drove, I wondered why I started thinking about Darcy while being intimate with Juanita. I had never done that before. Since breaking up with Darcy, I had shared a bed with half a dozen women, and not once did thoughts of Darcy intrude. Then, with Darcy back in my thoughts, I started thinking about what she had said earlier at Ernie's. Was it true? Could I believe her? In my anger that night, did I give more significance to what I saw than was actually there? If we got back together, would I always wonder and, as a result, always be suspicious of her? That's what it all came down to, trust. That's what is required for a relationship, trust. A relationship couldn't work if every time you were apart, you wondered what the other person might be doing. It wouldn't work if every time your partner came home late, you questioned where she had been and what she had done. It couldn't work if the other person called to cancel a date, leaving you to wonder what they were doing instead and possibly with whom. This question loomed before me as I thought about Darcy and what she had told me. Could I trust her? Even as I asked myself this question, I knew there was only one way to find out. I slept my usual exhausted sleep, as I always did after an evening with Juanita. On my way to work, I stopped by Bob's Big Boy for breakfast, and when I got to my office, I picked up the phone, called Darcy, and asked her to meet me at Barney's roadside cafe at 6. She said she would be there. I was already seated at a table when she walked in, and I saw the look of hopeful anticipation on her face as she approached me. As soon as she sat down, I got straight to the point. "So, what do you want, Darcy? To meet up from time to time?" "That would be great, Rob, but you know what I want. I want you back in my bed, where you belong. No commitments. Dinner and dancing would be nice, but the main thing is I want you back in my bed." "So, you're proposing a friends with benefits relationship? Call it what you want, Rob, but I need you back in my life." "No commitments?" "None." "When's a good time to call you this week?" "There's no time like now, Rob. My place, your place, a motel, your back seat or mine, but right now is the perfect time." I tossed a tin on the table, stood up, and followed Darcy out of the bar. I have no idea how this will turn out. It will all depend on whether I can learn to trust her again. It might take some time, if it happens at all, but we're both young, so we have time. Thank you for listening until the end.